So what if we tranquilized an animal and then sexually exploited them?
No, I don't agree.
No. Why not, though? Hi David, nice to meet you. My name is Ed. Today I'm at Boston University and I have a banner that says, "Why aren't you vegan yet?" You've very kindly come over, you've sat down, which I appreciate so much, but now I'm interested to know what your response to that question is.
Yeah, so I think I've been eating meat my entire life, and I do think it's a good source of protein. I'm aware there's a lot of other sources of protein, and a lot of my friends are vegetarian.
Yep.
And I just think that, like, in general, I just really like the taste of meat, and I think that, in my opinion, that it's like, I think it's worth it, I guess, in that sense. And
so do you think that the enjoyment you get from eating animal products justifies what happened to animals?
I would say that if they're like, I know there's no such thing as, like, I guess, humanely killing an animal, but I think if they are humanely killed and, like, they don't feel any pain when it happens, then I think that it could be justified, that the enjoyment's worth it, because I think there's, like, different views about what an animal, like different levels of, like, how important an animal is.
Sure.
And there's obviously, like, saying that, like, humans might be at, like, the top of the food chain and that they might be considered to be more important. So in that sense, I'd say, like, if they're humanely killed, then I could argue that it would be justified.
But you did say before that you kind of started by saying that there isn't a humane way to kill an animal, but then you're saying if they are humanely killed. So I guess I'm wondering, what is a humane way to kill an animal?
Yeah, I did like contradict myself earlier, but I would say a humane way to kill an animal is just it not feeling any pain. And again, I still will say that, like, at the end of the day, killing an animal is not a good thing to do, but if I had to kill an animal, then humanely would be without feeling pain.
But you don't have to.
That's true, I don't have to kill an animal.
So why do you?
Because I like the taste of the animal.
Nice.
Yeah.
But and that kind of puts us in a little bit of a cycle, because I guess the point is, if we are in a situation like you and I are, where there isn't this requirement for us to consume animals, and we recognize that it's better to not kill them than to kill them, my argument would then be that, well, there is no such thing as a humane way to kill an animal when you know the situation that we're in. Do you agree with that or disagree?
I agree with you. I think it has to do something more with, like, the empathy I feel for animals and that disconnect, I guess. I think maybe you would feel more empathy for animals and, like, killing them, and for me it's like, I think they're more of a resource that if they're humanely killed, then I would feel less bad about eating them, and to me, like, consuming them would be worth the enjoyment.
So I guess with that in mind then, when we say it worth it, does that mean that, are there limitations to things that we can or should do to animals based purely on enjoyment?
It depends. Like, if they can, like, feel that they're being tortured, or if that they feel that they're, like, if they feel pain to an extent, I think there is a limitation on what we should be able to do. Like, I don't think we should be, like, caging up animals, but if they are humanely raised and killed and they don't realize what's happening to them, I do think that it could be worth it.
So it's about reducing suffering overall. We recognize that situations where there is obvious suffering, such as, you know, cages and such, is bad, and so we think that situations that reduce suffering are preferable. But I guess the question is maybe a little bit different to that, which is that if we recognize that the reduction of suffering or animal suffering is preferable, whilst we recognize that a system of farming that takes them out of cages is better than a system of farming that keeps them in cages, is a system of farming that doesn't have animals involved at all the furthest reduction of animal suffering that we can achieve from our food choices? In other words, if we want to reduce animal suffering, surely taking them out of farms in totality is the best way to do that.
Yes, I agree with you with that. I think that would be the best way to reduce animal suffering. At the same time, I do think that for human benefit, or, like, for human enjoyment, I guess, that there should be, like, kind of a balance in between, like, what animals deserve and what humans can get out of animals. And I think that in that sense, animals, as long as they're not feeling it really, and, like, they don't feel the pain, and they have, like, freedom to, like, a decent extent, I'd say it still would be beneficial for humans, for, like, their enjoyment to eat animals.
So let's say that there's an animal who's walking past us now. Let's go for the classic example. Let's say they're a dog. If someone was to shoot that dog without the dog suffering, does that then make it moral?
No, I do not believe so.
Why not?
Because I think the dog, I guess I also think that animals have different levels of like I would treat animals differently depending on the animal that they are. So I think for a dog, I view it as more like probably slightly more intelligent than a chicken per se, and I feel like it depends, but I would say like if it's like a domesticated dog or something, it would have more value towards humans like alive, let's say.
What about a stray dog?
It depends. I think that like is a bit closer. I wouldn't be sure yet. Like I'm not very close to chickens at all. So
no. But does your emotional proximity to an animal decide whether or not they should be allowed to live without being, having exploitation inflicted upon them?
I think for me personally, maybe. Like, I think that my emotional proximity would decide. Like, if you had me choose between whether I want a stray dog to live or a chicken to live, I'd probably choose the stray dog. So I think it affects.
What about if we have another option, which is the stray dog, the chicken, or both get to live? What would we choose then?
I would choose both get to live. So
why don't you do that every day?
Because I still think I get more enjoyment from...
So you wouldn't choose both get to live?
If I had to eat one...
What if you don't have to?
If I don't have to eat one, but I want to eat one, I would still choose that I would kill the chicken to eat it.
But you said that you'd choose for both to survive if you could.
If I could,
Which you can.
That's true, I could. But like, ideally, if I didn't have to eat any of them...
Which you don't.
That's true. But I want to.
Exactly.
So it's more like...
you don't want both to live. You want one to die.
For the purposes of eating it, yes, I want one to die. And I would choose the chicken to die.
So why is it then okay for an animal to be killed in a situation where they don't have to because you want them to, but not okay for another animal to be killed in a situation when it's the same, when fundamentally what we're talking about is the taking of an animal's life when we have an option which is to not take either animal's life? Like, why is it justified to kill the chicken when we don't have to?
If it's like a stray dog and like I felt like I really wanted to eat a dog, let's say, then I think it would be like similar, like still justified, like in a society where like dogs were basically like chickens and like it was normal to eat them.
Okay, but now we're almost appealing to societal norms. We're saying if society said it was acceptable, it would be acceptable. But do societal norms automatically describe what is moral or immoral?
Not always, but I think a lot of the times it is a good representation, and I think that it mainly depends on like down into like, I guess, what humans get out of the animal. And I think if they're able to get more enjoyment out of eating it, then...
So pleasure?
Yeah, pleasure.
So it's okay to do something to an animal if we get pleasure from it?
If it's like painless and harmless, or like not harmless, but painless and like... Yeah.
So what if we tranquilized an animal and then sexually exploited them?
No, I don't agree.
No. Why not, though?
I think that's a bit... I don't know. I think I just would not feel comfortable.
They're not suffering, and it's for enjoyment.
That's true. That's a valid point.
So why is that wrong?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Because I guess if that's wrong, why is it not wrong to take their life from them?
I think...
So lame.
I think that taking their life from them's like a quick way out. I guess if they were like permanent, I still wouldn't say it's okay. It's hard to like put a disconnect from like getting like sexual enjoyment out of an animal and like it just being tranquilized, and like it feels, I don't know. Like, I guess that's fair to say that, like, that's a good point you make, but I would say that I do think it's like societal norms that justify it.
Absolutely. I mean, societal norms justify it from like a legal perspective or from like a taboo or non-taboo perspective. But if we extrapolate that, there are, of course, many societal norms around the world, including here in the US as well, that we would consider, I think a lot of us would consider to be wrong, regardless of them being societal norms. And I also think that there's many things that are societal norms, or there are things that are not considered societal norms, which should be. In a country around the world, people are still persecuted for their sexuality. In many countries around the world, people are still persecuted for their gender. So I think that there is a fundamental issue with appealing to societal norms, because then it allows societies around the world that clearly have very bad norms, including some here in the US, it allows those norms to be perpetuated with the false belief that those norms make those things acceptable or not acceptable. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think that not everything can be like justified through societal norms, but I do think I feel like eating, I guess my point I think is like eating meat is not the same as like sexually assaulting like a tranquilized thing. And
but one results in death and the other does not. And I guess what I'm interested in, I don't think either's acceptable, obviously, but what I'm interested in is the experience of the animal. And I think it's wrong to rape, to sexually exploit, rape an animal, whatever it may be, even if they're tranquilized, because it's infringing on their autonomy and their rights. Their right not to have these things done to them. And I think that they deserve basic autonomy. But then killing them is also an infringement on that autonomy and their basic right to be in control of their own body,
That's fair. I'd say, I'd say like, no, that's definitely a bad point.
Yeah, fine. I appreciate that. So what about you now then? Why aren't you vegan yet?
I think the same reason as the beginning.
Enjoyment. So let's put this into perspective then. And I don't want to keep you forever, David, so you go whenever you need to, but let's put this into perspective. When we eat an animal or an animal product, that's like 15 minutes, isn't it? It's a meal. Sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more, but let's say 15 minutes. So we get that pleasure for 15 minutes. And now what we're saying is that the entire experience of an animal, so how they're raised, and remember 99% of animals in the US are factory farmed, so these are where they're mutilated, kept in cages. So basically, if you're getting food from Boston University, it's coming from these awful places. So now we're saying that this 15 minutes of sensory pleasure is more important than the entire experience and life of an animal, and all the suffering that they endure, and the eventual slaughter of that animal. When we put that into perspective, I suppose, what do you think does have high value? 15 minutes of sensory pleasure, or the entire lived experiences and life of the animal who has suffered and then been killed for that 15 minutes of sensory pleasure? What do you think has higher value?
Again, I'd say like it depends on like how the animal's raised. Again, if it's like a painless procedure, like the reality is it's not. But I think if it were like, if we were able to achieve like a society where it's like painless and they had like freedom to roam around, whatever, and then they were killed, I'd say that it would probably be, like, to me it'd be worth it. It depends on the person, I think.
But even if, let's say I don't argue with you on that point, even though I think that is wrong, but let's take that out of the equation for a second. That's not the society we're in. That's not the choice that you have. You have a choice between consuming plants or consuming animal products. And every single one of those animal products, even if they don't come from factory farms, comes from a farm where they are mutilated. Even grass-fed farm animals are mutilated, where they're slaughtered at a fraction of their lifespan, and that slaughtering is not done in a way that is conducive of reducing suffering and pain. There's still fear involved in slaughter. So the situation we have now isn't even one where you can buy that product that you think is okay. That product doesn't exist. So with the situation you have now, what will you do, ethically speaking, or just from a behavioral perspective?
I think, ethically speaking, my ethics, in this sense, aren't probably where it should be, because I find it very difficult to give up meat.
Sure.
I think ethically being vegan is the right thing to do. I do agree with you on that. I just think that I prefer taking the easy way out, and I think it's much more difficult for me to get the nutrients from being vegan, even though I do know it's very possible. And yeah, I think for me, it's what I'm raised with, and I would just take the easier way.
Look, obviously I know that we're only together 20 minutes or so, and to change your entire paradigm and how you live is unlikely, and I appreciate that I don't expect you to sit down, spend 20 minutes with me and go, you know what, Ed, this is it from this moment on, I'm going to be vegan, then we fist pump and high five. I don't expect that to be what happens. But I think you said that ethically you haven't. you said something about your ethics, and I actually think that what you said is incorrect. I think that you have the right ethics. Your ethics are there because you agree with pretty much everything that I've said. So ethically, you and I are not that different. It's just from a behavioral perspective, we haven't quite aligned our behaviors yet with the ethics that we both mostly share in common. So I think from the position you're in, it's just about deciding, like, is it important to do something that aligns with you ethically or something that's easy? And I think that following ethics is more important than following ease and convenience, because following ease and convenience would mean that we don't do things, both societally but also individually speaking, that we should do. And even from like an academic perspective, you're studying something that's not easy, but you're doing it because it's the right thing for you and because it's conducive to you creating a better life for yourself. It's a similar principle. You making the choice to eat more plants and be vegan isn't necessarily the easiest thing for you, but it's conducive to creating a better life for others. And it's about viewing that hardship not from your own perspective, but viewing it from the perspective of those who will benefit from it. And from an academic perspective, you benefit, but from a vegan perspective, they benefit. And the benefit that they receive is far greater than the minor inconvenience that you feel at the beginning. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, have a great day and a great life.